DaithiDublin's thoughts and my thoughts about his thoughts. Daith, you were talking about interest in the tiny house, and I was thinking about all the things like water and like living in such a small space. Everything affects everything else, and how you have to balance that out, and also things like where you put a window in your house or how you install the door suddenly changes how the house can function, until finally, like, you get everything in there, all the pieces decide where they go by where they fit and their necessity and use, and then suddenly it's like you can't move anything around. Like everything fits like a puzzle, and it does put you into deep contact with everything that you do and use and eat and consume. You have to bring in by hand pretty much almost every day, and then the same thing with carting out your waste. Even like producing wastewater is a big challenge. How to get rid of that in a way that doesn't excite criticism. But actually, one of the things I was thinking about, I was thinking back to when I first made the tiny house, is how it's perceived. Because, like, for instance, like, you see me walking along with two dogs, especially if you see that they're not only well-mannered, but they respond quickly to commands. You make assumptions about this dog guy. Like, he's got really good dogs, so he's probably caring, dutiful, like, he's out here every day, and the dogs respond to him, so he's training them, and you make all these assumptions. And I think that when you live in a tiny house, people make assumptions about you. About that you're like one of those simple living folks, and then there's also that kind of like caravan like living, like it's like wanderlust. It's like, oh, you could imagine pulling the tiny house into the forest in the summer and commuting to work from the forest over the summer months, getting up there on top of the house on this big 16-foot long deck, and having your head in the trees. The joys of it. Like it talks about adventure, and I guess RVs do as well. But the thing about buying a trailer, then building a wood structure on it, installing the windows and what kind of windows, and like how high it is and the shape of it, what kind of roof. Everyone freaked out when they saw me put a flat roof on it. And maybe some of them, understood when they saw me like sitting up there. It's like this giant deck. I have a tiny house with a giant deck on the top. But I think that, I parked on the street, and there's people in my neighborhood who own RVs, and they park them. There's something really big in that tree. They park them on their property, behind fences, typically sometimes even behind their houses. Because I feel for sure that if I would park an RV on the street for 6 years, someone would have complained by now. But you park the tiny house on the street, this little teeny wooden cabin that everyone watched me build myself. There's some completely different response to it. It's almost protective. It's like a little, I don't know what you would call it, like, it's a neighborhood ornament, a neighborhood landmark, rather than, I think, if I was, driving like a Winnebago or something like that, an RV, a camper van, it'd be considered more like an eyesore. So, people have stopped and taken photographs. One of my friends from Canada saw a photograph of my tiny house on the internet, on a photo sharing site. So I think that's the thing, like the function and the lifestyle. It's all interesting, and but I think it's more interesting in how living in a tiny house is perceived by others. Sometimes there's like a big sense of that. I might be living in poverty, but it's not a judgmental sense, because especially once again, everyone watched me build it myself. I may be poor, but I'm saving my money and I'm buying lumber with it. So, all right, Daith, those are my thoughts before I go on too long, and yeah, I'll see you in the tubes.